Persona 1 is a very special game to me. Its message about isolation and reaching out to others really resonated with me, and understanding the dark parts of yourself. And this may sound familiar because Persona 1 is the bedrock of the rest of the Persona franchise. Every single game takes different aspects of Persona 1 and pushes it. For example, Persona 5 took the whole cognitive world in your mind aspect from Persona 1 and made a whole game about that. Each person has their own palace, which I won't spoil who the actual main antagonist of Persona 1 is, but that's a very big part of the game, and I won't say anything else about it, but Persona 5 took a lot from that game. And that's part of the reason why it's important for them to bring back Persona 1 and 2, because so many mainstay elements of the games that we know and love now actually originated in those games. Of course, people don't know that because listen to Scott from Reddit. Says the first two Persona games are nothing like the modern series and are just S&T games in disguise. They're not. But that's besides the point. I'm here to talk about specifically how to remake it, or as I have already remade parts of it, and I'm going to showcase it later, but I would like to discuss it first. People have this misconception that Persona only started being stylish with Persona 3, but that's actually incorrect. Persona 1 has a lot of style and flair in its UI design, and in its character design, and in the design of its world. Of course, you don't see it in the PlayStation Portable port because it removes all the sauce, but I believe a remake could reintroduce all that. I think that Persona 1 Remake can easily be one of the best looking Atlus games so far. It's a very, like, the environment and everything, it's just beautiful. Like Deva Yuga, you have the Lost Forest, you have the Ice Castle. These are all things that I think Atlus could do a very good job of adapting to 3D. Before you guys bring up Persona 3 Reload saying, but Persona 3 Reload messed up Persona 3's aesthetic. Well, that's not really the fault of Persona 3 Reload. Every single piece of Persona 3 media after the original Persona 3 made the Dark Hour extremely green, especially those movies. And I'm not a big fan of those Persona 3 movies, I gotta say. But Persona 1 doesn't have any movies to worry about and conforming to. Persona 1 is just Persona 1. And Atlus has created some beautiful environments recently too, such as the fairy village from S&T 5. In fact, just S&T 5 and Persona 5 in general have amazing environments, and I think that can fit beautifully with Persona 1. In fact, Persona 5 shows a multitude of environments that I think work well for Persona 1. You see, Persona 1 doesn't have just one consistent environment like Persona 3 or 4 has a multitude of them. Like the Lost Forest has a very ethereal, spiritual feel to it. But then you also have areas like Sebek that's very industrial and scientific. And Persona 5 has I don't even need to say anything, like you can tell. I need to have the pristine white of Deva Yuga. I think they can pull it off. I truly believe they can. As long as Atlus bases Persona 1 Remake off of the PlayStation 1 version, then their aesthetic is gold. They have everything they need. The UI is beautiful. Everything is okay as long as they base it off the PlayStation 1 version. Since my concept, this is one of the concepts I'm going to show early in the video. This is my concept for a Persona 1 Remake menu. You see, it takes various elements from the Persona 1 PlayStation 1 version while also incorporating some new Persona elements while being faithful and just being a nice middle ground between the two. Personally, I think the remake should utilize an open linear type system when it comes to its overworld, because Persona 1 takes place almost entirely in Mikagecho, and all the encounters and stuff happen in Mikagecho for the most part, not counting like the Sebek dungeons and some spoiler stuff I won't say. So I believe it will be better to take a system from something like SMT5 or Kiseki, in which every area is connected, but it's just separated by like small avenues, like small sections with no loading screens, unlike Persona 5. As it'll make the overall experience more, how should I put it, cohesive. Because all of the Persona 1 encounters happen in an overworld. There's no separate dimension like Tartarus or the Shadow World or Metaverse to go into. I won't spoil anything. But that's how it is for most of the game. So making Mikagecho a very sectional thing where you're going from loading screen to loading screen to explore won't work. And speaking of encounters, all the encounters should not be random. We need bring in the SMT5, Persona 5, Reload approach of having these encounters happen in the overworld. As for how these encounters should look, I think something like Soul Hackers 2 or SMT4 will be the best, where it's just like an endless sort of distortion or blob thing that moves around an overworld. Not shadows, because shadows and demons are different until Persona 5, where it's demons who think they're shadows. But I'm not going to go through all the more explanation here. Moving on to gameplay, a lot of people say that they should just copy and paste Persona 5 gameplay, and while I'll be somewhat fine with that, I think they should at least attempt to add the grid system. Not in the way of the original game, because I think the grid system was just a pointless barrier in the original. The concept is good, but the way it was utilized just made some characters useless. Like for instance, Mark was just completely useless for most of the game, unless you just had him use magic and just spam it, because his guns and physical attacks just had no range. And in order to counteract that, I think they should mix like a P3R type gameplay with Kiseki. You see, in Kiseki they also have a type of grid system, but it's more fluid there. It's not a rigid system, and I think that would be a perfect way to utilize that. Because just like Persona, Kiseki also has magic attacks and physical attacks, and I'll show the footage on screen. And you can see that this system could work perfectly. Another barrier people say is, well, the Persona 1 and 2 casts are all wild cards. So how are they supposed to properly balance the game without making it so easy? Well, my first response to that is almost every Persona game is easy as hell, except for Persona 2 Eternal Punishment on the PS1, which is like hard as hell at the beginning for some reason. But other than that, these games are pretty easy. But I do have a solution for that. The first part of the solution is to bring back the Persona pool system for Persona 2. You see, unlike Persona 5 and 3 and 4, Persona 2 had a system where it was 8 or was it 10 personas in a Persona pool, and in each of the characters in your party could swap between any of the personas that were in that pool. And so the Persona compatibility system also helps with that, because some characters can't use certain arcanas or have less effectiveness with certain arcanas, so you kind of mix and match which ones are the best for your party. And so bringing that into the equation, you don't have a situation where they're just constantly exploiting everyone's weakness, because no, that won't happen, because certain personas have certain benefits. Not every party member can use those personas. And just like Persona 3 to 5, I think they should have an increased pool over the time of the game, to where it gets to 15 or 18 or something. And another way I think you could fix this balance is by stealing yet another function from the Kiseki series, which is the break system. Instead of one mores, which in this system, if everyone's a wild card, you probably could just stack a bunch of one mores. Instead of having that, I think you should have it where certain elements have an increased likelihood of doing damage against an opponent. But after hitting that weakness, the opponent isn't automatically knocked down. I think there should be a gauge like how it is in Kiseki, where the element, after getting a certain amount of hits on the opponent, their guard breaks. And then after hitting them when their guard is broken, you get a one more. I think by doing that, you have a nice balance and a nice in-between and another added challenge to the game. So we're going more strategic, which personas can I carry for this area, which will allow me to get one more instead of, oh, if I just get everyone to use this persona, it's automatic one more and I just steamroll them. And I think no more baton system. I think the baton system breaks the game, but that was probably would add it, honestly. But anyway, another feature I think they should add for combat, the fusion spells from Persona 2. Now they'll work differently. I think a nice way to kind of utilize the thirties that they added from Persona 3 Reload is that after your characters conduct a series of actions, their gauge will increase. And then after two or more characters' gauges increase, then they can do a fusion spell, which allows them to have like those nice cool animations that 30s or those things called in Persona 5 again, or showtimes, while not breaking the game, while keeping faithful to the elements that were in the first two Persona titles. Even though Persona 1 didn't have fusion spells, they canonically still used fusion spells. Like as you see in Persona 2, Nanjo and Eriko just jump right into using fusion spells, so that shouldn't be any game-breaking thing. As for like elements, just completely trash most of like the physical elements. There's too much in Persona 1, and you can see they realized that by the time of Persona 2 because they like cut that down. So I think just copy and paste the amount of physical elements there were in Persona 2 to Persona 1 Remake. And then as for the actual magic elements, I think they should I think they should throw away some of them, but like keep gravity and earth, because no other game has that, and plus some of the main characters' personas like Mark utilize gravity, so those kind of need to stay. And then leave some like water in there just to add some nice variation. I think that would actually help the balancing for having a cast of part of wild cards, because if you have more elements, then there's less of a chance of you having every single persona for every single element, and that way you'd have to be more strategic about how you play the game. But for physicals, yeah, just toss both of them out. They were not needed. Now for the story, I believe they should remove the dual route system. I think combining Snow Conquest with Sebek route would not only allow for a tighter story and more character interaction, but also allow us to see how the story played out canonically. Because in the games, in Persona 2 at least, well actually no, in both the ending of Snow Conquest and in Persona 2, it's hinted that Yuya, the name of the main protagonist, and the cast went through Snow Conquest first, and then went on to finish Sebek. And so allowing us to actually play through that not only gives us a greater understanding of how these events played out and how characters like Reiji and Hidehiko would interact with each other, it would also give a larger justification to having a remake in the first place. Because now you can say, oh wow, we're playing the canonical version of how Persona 1's story played out. Not just, oh, it's just another version of Persona 1. To allow for us to actually get more of these characters. Because by having every party member available, you now have a greater amount of interaction. Because in the original Persona 1, whether it be Sebek or Snow Conquest, you're locked to 5 characters. And these casts of characters are so cool, and they're so well written. But the biggest issue with Persona 1's cast is the fact that they can't interact with each other. I mean, I don't even know how Ayase and Reiji feel about each other. How do they talk to each other? How do Eriko and Hidehiko relate to each other? Yeah, you could just say, oh, well, you can just play them in Snow Conquest, but Snow Conquest is just the first half of the game. Well, theoretically, but it's still the first half of the game. You're not getting any of these cool in-game character moments where these two are just interacting because of this system. And I believe this system should be thrown out of a remake. This is made even more apparent by stuff like the Persona 1 CD dramas and the books. Like, the characters interact with each other, and it's so fun, it's so refreshing. People talk about Persona 4 having the best cast, but imagine Persona 4's cast with the type of tone of something like Persona 3. Doesn't that sound great to you? That's basically what Persona 1's cast has, but as a result of the structure of the mechanics, because of Persona 1 being a very experimental game, you're kind of locked out of that. Of course, I'm not saying to completely throw away the scenario system. In fact, I believe that they could take this chance to add a new scenario. You see, originally during the development of Persona 1, there were 2 additional scenarios that were in development that got scrapped. The first one is called the escape scenario, where instead of actually trying to help and save the Mikagecho and their friends, they instead try to run off and find a way to escape Mikagecho by themselves and completely disregard Kandori and Queen Ashura and every antagonist in the game. Sort of like Devil Survivor's early ending. It sort of worked like that, and at the end of that route, the party would end up stranded in a completely alien world, and that's where it ends. Like, doesn't that sound cool to you? I'd rather have that added to the game with a canonical version of Persona 1's main story than have to go through another route split thing between Sebek and Snow Conquest or a locked out of cool character interaction. And there was another thing that was scrapped too, which was after you beat the game, there was supposed to be a third scenario, which would focus on Yuya, Eriko, and Hidehiko, also known as Brown. And it would focus on the Snow Queen or Queen Ashura's revival. And I think that would be a awesome post-game scenario, kind of like the third semester. That could be Persona 1's third semester. And it's a great playground. Like, imagine if they brought back Satomi Tadashi to help write that. That sounds like an incredible addition to the game. Especially since we never saw the Persona 1 cast's third year of high school. Wouldn't it be awesome if that Snow Queen Quest revival storyline happens during their third year? So you get like one last hurrah of the cast before they graduate and start chasing their dreams? That's sick. Especially if you get Satomi Tadashi to go and write it. That would be peak fiction. We need this. Another thing I must say is do not take anything from the manga. Do not listen to those people who did not touch Persona 1 and just read the manga and who said the manga was better. It was not better. In fact, the manga cuts vital parts of their character growth and direction and just completely screws over some of the themes and parallels that certain characters have that I won't spoil right here. And it just makes for overall worse version of Persona 1. Like, I gotta say, it's just a completely non-character in the manga. It's insane. But the main reason I say this is actually for the protagonist. You see, contrary to what Reddit and other people have been telling you, the protagonist actually has a lot of character. Yuya Narumi is a delinquent loner who, before the events of Persona 1, is a nobody. He has 0 friends, and people only see his good looks from afar, but like he's a lone wolf. And he's a very aloof person. He's kind of like Makoto from Persona 3. But less I don't care and more it's time for gambling. Over the events of the game, Yuya finds his purpose in life. And there's like a whole bunch of stuff about his backstory, which I will be making a video about hopefully soon. I'm still going through different playthroughs of the first 3 Persona games because for some reason they decided to sprinkle his character throughout all 3 games, so I have to, and not even counting interviews, but that just shows how good of a character this is. As a matter of fact, Yuya and Yukino were both Kaneko's favorite characters from Persona 1, and so obviously someone like Kaneko, who has like a very big hand in Alice, why would his favorite character be someone with no personality? That's because Yuya does have a personality. And I would like them to explore it more in the remake because Persona 1 is a 90s game. In the 90s games, they expected you to play around with the same game for months and keep going and digging for new things in the game, which after I had like several playthroughs of Persona 1, as I went through different side conversations with NPCs in the main party, you see more and more of his character. He's a very detailed character. In fact, he's very much like Tatsuya from Persona 2 in personality, which Yukino herself even points out in Persona 2 Innocent Sin. And so I think having more like more non-essential dialogue options will help people see this. Like people were able to see Joker's, sarcasm and Makoto's, by his dialogue actions. Or by adding more, fun, low-stakes dialogue options, it allows you to see more of Yuya's character without completely changing the game. Like for instance, in Persona 1, if you keep Yuya in his regressive mind of not knowing his purpose and still hating himself, you get game over. Because he hasn't grown, and so he doesn't have the ability to reach out to the people who need to be reached out to in the story in order to save the day. In fact, I will go as far as to say that Yuya is my favorite Persona protagonist. Even more than Tatsuya, Maya, Yu, Joker, I like him more. I really appreciate his character writing and what they have. I just think it needs to be made more apparent for the modern gamer. A funny yet cool thing they could do is having like a fake out calendar system. People keep saying that you need a calendar system in order to sell a Persona game, which is not true because Striker herself proved that wrong. But anyway, have it start with 3 days, and in those 3 days you're experiencing Yuya's life. You see his broken home with his dead mother and his either depressed or abusive father. I'm not sure which it was supposed to be, but that was stuff that Tadashi helped write in the CD drama for Persona 1. And you see his aimless life, which is shown throughout the entire game, but you just see it for yourself. You see how he stays away from people, he's hidden anger. You see, I hope they have like a scene where they show him throw someone's bicycle on the highway, like Tadashi talked about in the interview. Like that was a really funny thing that he brought up. But that stuff is what we should see in those first 3 days. And then on the 4th day, you see Hidehiko drag Yuya along with the other classmates to go and play the Persona game. And then after they all get hit by lightning, you just see the clock break. And so the rest of the time period for Persona 1 is left ambiguous. And I know what you're thinking. What about social links? Well, they don't need social links. In fact, there's better systems which can be added. For instance, the link episodes from Persona 3 Reload are almost a perfect, no, I think they are a perfect replacement for social links for Persona 1 and 2. Because after certain important events happen, you can have these optional link episodes appear throughout the map, and you choose whether or not you want to go talk to the party member there. Or you could do something like the Fate system from Devil Survivor, which is very similar in its premise. The advantage I think the Fate system has is that it has more character interaction within the Fate system than like link episodes and social links have. Like sometimes, yeah, another character appears, but it's mostly about that character. But the cool thing about the Fate system is that it adds the other side characters into that Fate, and you can see more of the character through their interaction with the other characters as well, which I think would be a cool thing to have. Adding either of these concepts would be a great booster for character interaction. This could also allow you to interact with Yuya's mirrors and Kondori and spoilers. I won't say their name, but they're also a mirror of Yuya. And so you could have a link or episode about their connection, and you have Kondori trying to coax Yuya into feeding into his darker tendencies. And it would also allow for more Kondori screen time, which I think he's a great villain, but he doesn't have enough screen time. I think that would allow it to fix this issue. Alright, this section of the video goes into spoiler territory. So right now I'll put up a timestamp on the screen and you will see the timestamp. Go to that timestamp. If you do not want anything about Persona 1 spoiled and Persona 1's remake spoiled, then skip ahead. 3, 2, 1. Okay, Atlas must absolutely not shove Maki Sonomura in your face. Like, it's the dumbest thing they did with the PlayStation Portable version. You see, in the original Persona 1, was Maki a presence? Yeah, she was there. But you never knew what was up with her. It's just, oh yeah, she's a party member, she's just the heroine of the game, so that's why they're pushing her. But no, in the PlayStation Portable version, oh, the intro makes it so obvious that she's behind everything. The box art and everything in the PlayStation Portable version just points to Maki. And so the second anything happens, like, oh yeah, Maki is involved with this. This has something to do with Maki. And then you see Mai and what's her name, and Aki show up. You're like, oh yeah, Maki is definitely behind this. Oh yeah, these are just parts of Maki. And so the entire suspense and theory crafting is just thrown out. Like, the game gives other potential explanations, like Nanjo's many worlds theory, where he thinks they're just sent to a parallel world, which is what everyone just assumes. But the whole marketing and opening of Persona 1 Portable just completely spoils the fact that it's Maki. And so you just immediately connect the dots, and there's no suspense anymore. There's no thoughts or anything. So I like them to fix that by making an opening that doesn't focus on Maki, that instead focuses on the Mikage-cho and the cast of Persona 1 in general. So you don't immediately clock the fact that she's the actual main villain of the game, and that the fact that everything goes back to her. And it would be cool if they threw in more like theories like Nanjo's many worlds theory, like to add some more like time travel and stuff. I think that would also be a nice way to throw off the fact that it's Maki. But honestly, I played the PSP version the most because, oh my god, it's so stupid. I hate that version of the game.
Psych!
And now I also want to talk about the soundtrack. Keep Meguro away. Keep Meguro away. Keep Meguro away. Keep him away. Do not allow him anywhere near Persona 1 Remake. Because this guy does not understand Persona 1 soundtrack. Like, for instance, he said that The Rock and Persona 1 PlayStation Portable's opening was meant to represent how the original Persona 1 was presented. There's no rock in Persona 1's soundtrack. Persona 1's soundtrack is very electronic and techno and industrial. It's so cool and sometimes atmospheric. And Meguro just does not get that. And so you have to keep him away. And I'll give you the alternative. Tsuchiya also worked on the original Persona 1 soundtrack alongside Aoki, rest in peace. And he still got it. He's still making tracks, and his tracks still sound cool. And he's actually produced some of the best tracks in the game. Like right now, what you're hearing is Yukino's theme from Persona 1 PS1. That's his track. This sounds good. This is great. Now, would it be cool if they added like a lyrical track? Maybe if they had like an Advantage theme, like maybe some form of techno electronic remix of Dream of Butterfly. That would be a cool thing to do for like an Advantage theme. But I would much rather like the main battle theme be just a remix of the original Persona 1 PlayStation 1 battle theme. Because I hate Lone Prayer. It's so annoying now. it grates my ears to hear that damn song. I do not want to hear that song ever again. But whatever, I forgot to talk about the opening. I'll say as long as it's not something like the PlayStation Portable opening, I think I can just trust them to make a great opening. Atlus has never made a bad opening for their games, so I can trust them with that. But I will say I would like something like the Baroque opening, or something more in line with a Ryukishi game opening, Ryukishi 07. Something like that. I think those types of openings will work well with Persona 1. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, the graphics. And after this section, I'll show you my remake. I believe a Persona 1 remake can work well in either 3D or HD 2D format. For 3D, I have two ideas in mind. One is one that's a full-size 3D remake in lieu of Reload, and another is something more akin to Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis, in which the overworld is a more chibi doll style, reminiscent of something like Persona 3 or Persona 4 on the PS2, while the battle system is in line with Atlus's more recent games like SMT5 and Persona 5 and Reload. And for a HD 2D style of game, I think something like Eiyuden Chronicles is the best representation of how I want a Persona 1 and 2 remake to look like in HD 2D style. It's not a stereotypical pixel art style, it has a own unique style on it. So I think something like Persona 2 style sprites, but obviously with Persona 1 characters and touched up to be a higher quality, with a full 3D background reminiscent of Falcom games from the 2000s using the Piston engine. I think something like that can work perfectly. And if you're worried about sales for this type of remake, just remember that Octopath Traveler sold out 3 million copies. So they're not going to hurt over sales. And speaking of sales, no, Persona 1 remake will not flop. SMT5 alone sold 500,000 copies within just 3 days, and Persona 3 Reload sold 1 million in like a week. So obviously that's a very high number of sales. On top of the fact that this would be the first Persona game in the series, and the second add remake to that, everyone's going to see it as a perfect starting position to begin the Persona series. And then if Nocturne Remastered, that half-assed remaster, could sell 800,000 copies in like 6 months or was like a year, then Persona 1 Remake will be fine. I believe as long as they follow what I said and merging the two sides of the Persona series together for Persona 1 Remake, you're gonna have a remake that appeals to all fans of Persona and reaches an even wider audience. And now, as you all been waiting for, here is my Persona 1 Remake. Enjoy.
Persona